Welcome into Pressbox Live. I'm Stan the Fan Charles, and with me, as he is on most every Thursday for the baseball season, is Eric Garfield from Florida Prospects Report. He's going to be doing some stuff with us on PressBoxOnline.com. And welcome in, Mr. Garfield. How are you?
I'm doing good, Stan. It's about 6 or 7 degrees warmer than last week, so it's really starting to feel like baseball season is approaching.
All right. A lot more activity out at Twin Lakes Park and Ed Smith.
I unfortunately have had too much basketball to get out there,
Okay.
so potentially this weekend, I'm targeting Saturday as my first time out there.
All right. Well, our topic today, and then I got to do a couple business reads real quick. Our topic today, we talked about it off the air. We're gonna look do a deep dive into the 2023 Baltimore Orioles draft and see who, if any, of these players are real prospects, who are some pretenders, who are some posers, and who are some finds. And I think we'd agree, Eric, before I take care of business, the most interesting thing is I think Mike Elias, for the first time, used the expenditure of some draft capital to pick some pitchers. I think it's 9 or 10 pitchers.
I think it's actually more than that. It's a lot
13.
of college experienced pitchers. So that's what he and his staff feels like the system population was lacking. So he fixed it in one draft.
13. There's 13
That's
pitchers.
what I thought. Yeah,
All
that's a
right.
lot.
That is a lot. All right. Let me take care of a little business. What company has the expertise and technology to make your home substantially more energy efficient, comfortable, and even virus free? Well, that would be our friends at AJ Michaels Heating and Air Conditioning in Baltimore and Annapolis at ajmichaels.com. And now's the time to sign up for Superbook Sports. Superbook is the most trusted name in Vegas. And now you can use promo code StanCharles23 or my partner in crime, Glenn Clark 23, and I'll be on Glenn's show tomorrow on Friday. You can use Glenn Clark 23, Stan Charles 23 to score up to $250 with their first bet bonus. Win or lose, they will match your first bet to $250 with promo code Stan Charles 23, Glenn Clark 23, all one word with no spaces. Visit superbook.com for terms and conditions. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, and we'll tell you a little bit about the Costa Sin a little bit later on this look into the Orioles prospects as drafted on 23. Eric, let's start off. What's the most impressive thing that you think Mike Elias did in this draft?
Okay, the most impressive thing that he did in the draft was pick the Florida State pitcher Jackson Baumeister, who did not have what I would consider to be a standout experience at Florida State, but in amateur baseball circles, he's looked at a little better than his numbers would indicate at the Seminoles. So I think picking him somewhere in the 60s, the earliest pitcher that the Elias regime has ever picked.
He was
I
picked
think
60. He was picked 63rd.
Okay, thank you. I want to say that he represents, if there's a really high ceiling, this guy might explode maybe into a 1A type of pitcher. I think that's the best thing they got. I don't know if he's the best player or performer, but that's the one thing about the draft, looking at the class individually, that really excites me. He does not have a lot of wear and tear on his arm, but he does have a lot of metrics that the Orioles are looking for, and some great fastball characteristics that the Orioles have coveted in a while. So in some ways, getting him at 63 is a little bit of a bonus, because other organizations definitely had him high on their own lists.
It looks like he's 6'4". Is that
Yeah, he's
right? Is
pretty
he a
tall.
big boy?
That's one of the things on his draft profile. And when you read the write-ups, ideal pitcher's frame, or great size, great physicality. So looking at his body, his windup, and his release, he looks to be able to physically perform at a high level already.
All right. Quick question. I don't want to repeat ourselves because, we're in such a limited turf that we talk about that we can repeat ourselves a lot. It's interesting now in light of studying this and seeing 13 pitchers, and we think Chris Holt is a pretty good pitching coach
Yes.
at developing young pitchers. Is this perhaps one of the main reasons that Mike Elias tabbed him to go seemingly backwards? Is because this is where he put a lot of draft capital in this draft.
We've talked about his ability to educate and demonstrate and coordinate plans for pitchers, some of whom are advanced but not pro veterans. That's exactly what this class represents. They have experience in college. A lot of them, it's kind of unique. A lot of them, a fair percentage of them, started at one institution and ended their career at another one. So they really have the college experience. They moved, they lived in dorms, they trained at high level facilities. So they're as ready to be pros as a collective can be. They're just not there yet. I can't think of anybody with a more complete resume to teach them than Holt. So it's kind of like a perfect fit.
It's interesting in looking at the height of these guys. I
A
mean,
lot of them are tall.
if you've been around the Orioles for a long time, I'll never forget Sid Thrift when he was the assistant general manager to Pat Gillick. I'd sit with him out at Bowie or Frederick, and he'd go, Jesus, he'd go, look at the guys on that team. Look how big they are. Look at our guys. There's nothing but a bunch of puny guys. These pitchers are quite quite large in most cases. Six
A lot.
three, 6'4", one of them 6'7".
Yep, yep. One of them weighs 200 and I think 70 pounds. Riley Cooper from LSU. So yeah,
He's the only left-hander, right?
I believe there was another one. I'll have to check my chart, but
Okay.
overall, they are tall. And I've talked to scouting people, area scouts out at the stadium. We're behind the backstop watching pitchers, and some of them say this guy's going to be good no matter what because he's tall. My organization is looking for guys with long legs for that type of trajectory. We don't trust the short guys that much unless
Right.
their stuff is
Is off
dominant.
the chart. Yeah.
So I guess the Orioles are following a trend there to a degree. And 6'3" for this class is kind of short. They're all really, really tall. And also your Sid Thrift impression is pretty good after all these years. You sound just like him.
It's been a long time, but boy, he
A
was really something else.
unique character.
Um, Tell me a little bit about Baumeister because you got me excited about him. So if he's the real deal, and I'm not
Yeah,
saying he's going to help the team this year,
right.
but where do you see him starting off? Is he starting at Delmarva or lower?
I would estimate if he's healthy and he proves his health at this camp, maybe higher. It's not Florida.
Aberdeen, possibly.
Yeah, potentially. I mean, if this guy gets a bunch of decisions in the exhibition games and he's going 5 or 6 innings and he's striking out 10 guys per nine, does he really need low A? And also, there's
Now,
going to
when
be
you
other,
say exhibition games, you mean the games that they play at Twin Lakes Park, not
yeah, the minor
not the
league spring
major.
training,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
like prospects versus prospects. So it's his first opportunity to face his ilk as a pro. If he does well, I don't think he's going to necessarily need low A, but there also, as we look at the rest of the class, there might be some names who do and potentially not really room for him there, and he might be a fit that you don't have to force at high A. If he's as good as the perfect game people think he is, he's going to be better than he was at Florida State as a pro. I'm
Interesting.
intrigued too.
Interesting.
Yeah,
13 pitchers.
yeah,
I know we can talk about them each individually at some point. I'm sure we will this spring.
right.
But what would be a good percentage of them to help out the major league team over the next 4 or 5 years? Are we looking at 4 or 5 would be
That's
really
yeah,
a good number.
yeah. I think that would be a percentage that the Orioles would have to consider the draft pitchers wise a success.
And
But
maybe
with the,
two of them being meaningful.
that would be
I know we're not individually looking at the players, you know.
no, we're kind of like big picture, looking at them
Yeah,
like not individually, like collectively. I think that's very reasonable. If two of these pop into superstars, like high stat guys, fringe all star types, that would be an absolute coup. It would be impossible for anyone to look at this talent acquiring exercise as anything less than a success. But the Orioles program through the minors is taking a lot of good and turning them right to the edge of great. So 4 or 5 with 2 stars is certainly reasonable. I'm inclined to think that it might be a tick better than that, and that's why they took such a large group. Also,
yeah,
another thing that stands out, they're all from college. They drafted a couple of high school guys.
right.
They
So
didn't
these guys
sign.
could come a little faster if they learn their business quickly.
Right. And I guess the Orioles are good now, so they might be to some degree expected to accelerate their own development. I think it's really interesting over the years, like 94, 95% of the people they picked individually are from college, not high school. So it
Yeah.
almost says if the Orioles pick you from high school, they see something really special in you and your ability to develop.
I think it looks to me like Elias and Sigmidel though, they'll take bats that are high school players. There's such a long trip for a pitcher to go from high school to the majors. There's so much that can happen. I think
Good
they're
point.
more inclined to go for healthy at this time college pitchers. Uh, and I got to be honest, I always thought he missed the boat on taking more pitchers, but I think he had an eye on this plan, which
Yep.
was I'll make some trades and acquire guys like Bradish, and those kind of guys. And I'm gonna then when I need pitching, I'll take a bunch of it when I got a
Yep.
lot of position play.
I have to say, if that is his plan, that's excellent foresight. And as much as I like and trust Carter Baumler going forward, he's an example of why it's extremely risky to take high school
Yep.
pitchers, no matter what they look like, what their delivery seems to be, how in shape their body. Everything was pointing towards an arrow straight up, and so far it just hasn't worked that way for Baumler. So there's an example of the risk coming true.
Is Baumler going to pitch this year?
I believe he is going to pitch this year. I
Would you
think we're
think
going to
he'd be like at Aberdeen or something, or he might be Delmarva?
it that's a coin toss for me, and I think the answer to that depends on how he's doing and how
How he's
fast
feeling? Yeah, yeah.
how fast his velocity is. If it he already had some experience at Delmarva through the injuries, and I would categorize them as quite dominant. So if he's looking good, again, he's another guy that he's gonna pass low A because he already has, and there's other guys that are gonna need those innings there.
Okay, interesting.
Good question.
Baumeister, you mentioned him. You
Yep.
mentioned Riley Cooper. Do you
Yep.
like Cooper? And who's a couple of the other pitchers? Because I don't want to mention all 13 today, but
Okay.
give me a couple of them.
Yeah, of course. I like the guys from LSU. I'm not a college baseball supporter or follower. I'm not going to pretend to be one, but we all know what LSU is. We all know why they exist. They're a true pro training factory at the highest level. It might not make me watch the
So you're
game.
talking about now, you're talking about Blake Money, the 6'7" kid
Yeah,
from
he
LSU, and then Riley Cooper from LSU.
correct.
And those are the two from LSU.
Yep, back to back, number 12 and number 13, and they're both larger than average size. Money was born in Sarasota, so if I ever meet him, we'll have a lot to talk about
Right.
out at camp. He's probably played at Twin Lakes as a little leaguer quite often. But yeah, I like the idea of having near professionals in their early 20s who have experience against the best bats from Tennessee and Arkansas and Kentucky and Mississippi. So they might not be high pedigree guys, but to get them LSU performers, they pitched in a College World Series. Uh, Cooper became their trusted bullpen pitcher down the stretch as they got closer to the championship and pitched in some big games. So I think that's a real asset towards developing other people. Money and Cooper are kind of like examples. They've already been there. The one I like the most overall is the reliever from New Jersey. He went to Coastal Carolina named Teddy Sharkey. He's kind of short. He kind of generates a lot of gas really easily. And the thing that stood out to me was his spray charts. His fastball hits the same spot. His slider hits the same spot, exact same spot. And his curveball is about a foot lower than the slider. That's what he's throwing. He's a reliever. Come and get it. Nobody could. He had the heat up to 98, and I saw him perform in the FCL. This guy's going to develop fast. He doesn't need seasoning. He knows.
He's only 5'10", but he's a relief pitcher.
I think he and I saw close to eye to eye. I'm not tall. I might be a twinge taller than the Shark, but I can't throw like that guy. I don't know that many people that can. He's got some. Is
he straight overhead, or is he sidearm?
Okay, he's a little bit like Lamar on the run. If he's got to vary it a little bit differently because of the pitch, then he will. For the fastball, he's more side than you think, and for the curves, he's more over the top than you think. So the pitcher's mind, when looking at what's coming, is already a little off, and then the action comes at you. He's really a very, very unique. The more people watch him, the more they're going to like him and see him as a future bullpen option.
So he sounds pretty crafty. It sounds like if he's ahead 0-2, you're not going to know whether he's going to come with the sidearm curve, the sidearm fastball, or overhead.
And he's very confident, very demonstrative. He's out there for between 5 and 9 outs at a time. So he's hunting strikeouts. And in the dugout, I saw this in the dugout, in the clubhouse, in the walking from the bus over. He's got that attitude that people follow him and he brings people up. Really great draft pick. I believe that Teddy Sharkey's going to make it all the way. Be a good teammate and a good player.
Tell me a little bit about another guy from a big time school, Texas, Tanner Witt, who's 6'6", taken in the 18th round, 541st overall.
Well, he did not sign with the Orioles, so we're not going to see him.
I did mark him down as he had. I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's quite all right. He's an intriguing pitcher. And from what I read about him, we're going to hear from him again. I don't think it's going to be as high as he and his camp believe. I don't think he's going to be like a lottery type pick.
But he thinks he can do a lot better than 18th round.
That's what he will do a lot better, but he won't get to the top.
He'll be in the 5th round, 6th round, something like that.
So it's more money for him, considerably more money for him. But if he has his eyes on a pro career, signing bonus isn't going to matter that much as it is. So sometimes you have to look at the decisions and question them a little bit. Witt is one that I was just like, you should have signed.
Okay. All right. We've done a little bit of the pitching today. Tell me a little bit about position players. Now, the number one pick is Enrique Bradfield, who has the incredible speed tool, but his hit tool is questionable.
Yeah. I don't know where to start. I would not have recommended that pick myself, as much as I certainly covet speed and defense. I'm not a draft Nick, but I would not have picked someone with so many questions about their ability to touch the baseball swinging and drive it. Now, the good thing about them picking Bradfield, who might end up as the fastest player in baseball history, is that they backed him up with insurance throughout different levels of the first round, kind of like when the Redskins drafted RG3, then they later took Kirk Cousins just in case, and they both ended up being pretty decent. So if Bradfield doesn't fulfill the Orioles' highest plans or work out the best, There's
Who's that
Tavian.
backup guy? Who's that backup guy?
Well, there's two. There's Tavian Josenberger, who's a little more defensive oriented, and then
Okay.
there's Matthew Etzel, a little lower, who's a little more offensive inclined. So it's not.
Josenberger played his ball at Arkansas.
And Kansas before that. Right,
Okay.
right. So the videos I watched of him, and now we're in a different phase. You know, you don't have to read; you can just watch.
Right.
Uh, the videos of him, he looked like, oh, what's an out? He was an outfielder that had no problem covering a lot of ground, and where other people would be making sliding catches or reaching catches, he's just there. So that's something that Bradfield has in spades, and Josenberger has also, just in case. I kind of like Etzel from Southern Miss a little bit more. I watched him play and practice in the FCL, and then they had a late camp in September. I saw and heard him swing. His contact is pretty loud. I think he's going to be somebody that Orioles minor league fans are going to like watching at their high A and double A stadiums. Etzel is a pretty good player already.
Matthew Etzel. Okay. And I know you
ETZEL. Yeah.
mentioned you like Jake Cunningham.
I would say he is my favorite player in the entire draft class.
Six
He,
three from
yep,
UNC Charlotte.
yep, a
What's
fast.
his game? What's his game like?
He's a good first step, but better long speed, a better strider. 6'3", when you're far away, he doesn't look that tall, but when you're standing up, he does look tall, like maybe a tall NFL safety build. The comp I have for him, the way he plays and moves in the outfield and transfers into a throw, Steve Finley at his peak. That, but a little stronger because the contact, the ball sails or goes off the bat a little bit faster. So Cunningham, I watched him throw people out. I have videos of all these players debut, every single guy that we've mentioned on my Twitter account. But Jake's are the best because he's kind of like the most electric athlete that wasn't Bradfield. Throws it hard, runs hard, hits it hard, plays hard, a baseball grinder. Orioles fans are going to love Jake Cunningham. Some of them have seen him already.
Remember, next time we're on, to either put your name as your Twitter feed and promote the fact that people can see this video on your Twitter feed.
I
Okay.
will remember that.
All right. I've got to take a time out real quick and talk a little bit about the Costas Inn. Then I want to revisit Bradfield because we both have enough respect for Mike Elias and Sig Mejdal to think that they know that he's got a lot of miss right now, but they must project that they think they can help him out in some way, shape, or form. I want to talk about that
We'll discuss it.
after I finish with the Costas Inn. The Costas Inn, by the way, I want to congratulate my buddies Nick and Pete. It was great. As horrible as that Raven game was Sunday, I'm sure Eric was watching it down there in Florida. But they came back from a commercial, and before they came into the game, there was the Costas Inn. The whole building. Then they went inside. They had the waitresses.
Oh
They had
wow.
the bartenders. They had Pete putting crab cakes in.
Ooh.
That must have been done in the morning because he was out there at the game, I'm sure. But big sports fans, congratulations to them for getting that publicity. But you know about the Costas Inn. Great steamed crabs, great crab cakes, great crab soup, and then there's specials galore from Monday through Friday. Anything your heart desires, beef, poultry, fish. They got specials in all of them. You can also grab either a can or a 6-pack of Goose Flight's lager. It's Goose Flight's 98. It's the beer that we created with the Guilford Brewing Company and the Saragusa family, Sammy Saragusa, Tony's daughter. And we're trying to raise some money, help get some money into the coffers to keep them flying people that need medical care, non-essential. It's not life-threatening yet. A lot of times people need to fly to Atlanta, Georgia to get the best treatment for what they have, or they got to fly to Cleveland. And Tony Saragusa was always his dream to turn his aviation company into doing that. and they do it right now. It's a great mission. So check out Goose Flight's Lager. You can get it at the Guilford Hall Brewing Company. All seven of the Glory Days grills, the Costas Inn, and the Wine Source there in Hamden all have. The Wine Source has the cases. Uh, Glory Days, you can buy individuals and six packs, and it's all there for you. Goose Flights. All right. Getting back to Enrique Bradfield. Um, we interviewed him. I forget what show, whether I was on with Glenn Clark when they first
Was
interviewed him.
it was
Really nice kid. Um, got a lot of questions on whether he can hit or not. There seems to be a belief in that these hitting gurus today, from like Driveline and all the, them the names better than I do, but that they can make up for what your deficiencies are by teaching. Can you tell us a little what what might have gone into the thinking of why they obviously you've said wouldn't have been your pick there, but it wasn't a top five pick, it was a little bit later on. But what they think they can do with him.
I think they can optimize where he makes contact on the bat consistently, where he showed with an aluminum bat that he could not, or he did not. And they probably speculated on why he didn't. Maybe it was body size, maybe it was wrist speed, maybe it had to do with musculature, not strong enough. And they figured we can alter that factor, we can improve it, and then the results are going to improve potentially quickly. Otherwise, they would not have picked him with the 17th pick. I do
Is
not
he a
agree with.
guy? Is he a guy whose speed makes the bunt an incredibly dangerous weapon? Because you're talking about if he gets on first, a damn good chance he's on second and maybe
Okay,
even third.
I
And he hasn't
stand.
hit the ball out of the infield.
I think so very much, very strongly. He's a person that could bunt consistently, beat the play, even if they were strategizing against it. His speed is otherworldly. It truly is once in a generation type of movement, long and burst. But do people bunt in baseball today? Do people steal like overall as a strategy? Even fast players? I don't think the Orioles are going to like go against the way baseball is played to have Bradfield on their roster and utilize him. So I just don't
But if
think.
he plays defense the way you're talking about and runs, who cares how he gets on base?
Not me. I don't
Okay.
care.
Okay.
But can he hit at all? That's the problem. If he does what you just outlined and gets a fair on base percentage, 348, 358, something like that. But his average is 197. Is he a worthy draft pick at 17? And is he really helping a good
Wait a minute,
team get to a higher level?
you're talking about his on base percentage is 197?
No, his batting average,
Batting
but
average. Okay.
his on
Okay.
base is over a third of the time, maybe even in the close to the fours. But is he
Now,
really helping you?
does he
And was he
walk at all? Does he walk at all?
not as much? I mean, not as much as
So
somebody
he's
who's.
right now, he's like a potential 275, 280 on base guy.
That's not that good.
No,
That's
it's terrible. I'm saying
right.
it's
So right.
I'm just
I
trying to get
know.
the facts out of what you're suggesting and projecting. So they've got to get him at 310, 315 to make him really viable major league player.
I don't study the draft, but when you pick somebody that early, you don't usually need to put in all the work that it looks like Bradfield requires. He's not going to be a non-roster invitee to major league camp either. That's a huge indicator to me that a lot of that work still remains. And then you look at the fact Josenberger, similar profile, Etzel, similar profile, drafted, you know, 5 rounds and then 10 rounds below him as protection. The whole thing seems a little bit too iffy for the 17th pick. Pick him in the second round. Pick him in the third round if he's there. Your first guy, your headliner. It's just not. I don't see it. And the guy they picked after him in the second round, Mac Horvath, instantly to me looks like a more projectable type of baseball talent.
Tell me about him. And before we go,
Yeah,
he's the number. He was their number 2 pick, chosen at 53rd pick.
from North Carolina. He played third, he played second, and he played outfield. And he did in his brief time down here, he did all that too. He's an outfielder more than he's an infielder. He's got a great arm and a really strong throwing setup. He's another one. All the draft reports after he was picked questioned his hit tool, his overall ability to touch the ball frequently enough to be a pro. He can drive it when he does. His power is not off the charts, but it's certainly noticeable. But he's another guy where the questions remain. Can he touch it enough in a series, in a game, in an at bat to be a regular? So what I saw of him was pretty good. And again, I've got video of Horvath. But there is one name that we haven't mentioned at all yet
Go ahead.
that I want to tell people about really quickly. He really, really impressed me. Most people are not going to care or not going to know. I want to say this is a 16th or 17th round pick, a catcher named Cole Irvin from California.
Is he related to Cole Irvin?
I don't think so. They don't even spell their name the same way. They're definitely not built the same way.
Right.
Cole Irvin looks like an NFL running back. He is jacked. He's built like the Michelin Man. His reputation is defensive catcher, low hit, but he hit 250 in college. It's not 150. When I saw this guy catch and hit, I was so impressed. He looked like a second or third round pick. He is near perfect with the footwork as a defender, with all the equipment on, blocking, throwing, sprinting out to the mound to pat a pitcher on the back after they do something good. This is a great defensive catcher. I mean, great. I slow-moed him down in drills. I mean, he does not move even an inch the wrong way. Cole Irvin really impressed me. Then when he was
Cal State Fullerton.
So that's a real program.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know exactly.
Are they the Anteaters? Cal State Fullerton?
No, I think they are the Titans.
That's right. Cal State. I'll have to look it up. There's one of those schools out in California that's the Anteaters, but I think you're right. They're the Titans. Last thing before we go today. We can't get into a whole big thing about the new owner of the Baltimore Orioles, David Rubenstein. But I did want to ask you one thing because you know the value of prospects. In other words, Dylan Cease has 2 years of control left, but by the time you'd acquire him and he's through your first season, you're already got to extend him. So it didn't seem likely under John's ownership, or when I say ownership, his running of the team with the financial capabilities they had,
his stewardship.
His stewardship. It didn't seem likely that they were going to extend somebody that they acquired. But now, let's say it's the middle of the season now, it's June 15th, and Milwaukee Brewers are 12 games out of first place, and Corbin Burns is pitching lights out. Now, you got an owner that might have the pockets to extend him for 5-6 years beyond. How much easier is it for an Elias to pull a trade when he's got the money behind him to extend a pitcher?
I'm going to say it's a lot easier, markedly easier. And when you talk about Rubenstein and his group with the ability to do it, they also might have, we don't know, they might have the desire to do it. They might look at the roster and say, we're close, but it's not enough. We need a veteran. So they might be inclined to trade a couple prospects. And it seems like right now, the White Sox haven't moved their asset because they're asking for a Mayo type or a Basayo type. And so far, either because Angelos owns the team or Elias doesn't want to part with those particular names, it hasn't happened, and it doesn't look like it's on the precipice of happening. But the factors that you said, Milwaukee's bad, the Orioles are near contending or contending. Yeah, it's going to seem like we've now got the coffers to put up the money for that extension and maybe one for Adley, and maybe one for Gunnar.
Yeah.
So
See,
it's
the thing is,
reason to be optimistic.
it changes the dynamic so much when you're
Yes.
sitting here wondering whether they've got the ability to even extend Adley, and now you know that they do.
Yep.
Suddenly, Basayo becomes more in play. You know.
Absolutely. And maybe less of a catcher.
Yeah.
If the Orioles have Adley now looking like for 8 years instead of 5 years, well, their timeline that looked like it was going to go like this and intersect just might not. But Basayo's still going to have that bat, so maybe more likely first base or DH. That's very reasonable. But a new owner that's not an Angelos gives, no matter how you support or look at the Orioles, you have a lot more reasons to be optimistic. How can we not celebrate that?
Yeah, a lot different though, the reasons for it, because again, the biggest crime John had was that he didn't have Dad's checkbook. They didn't have
Correct.
access to Dad's cash. I bristle at some writers that refer to him as miserly or cheap. It's
Right.
a lot different when you don't have the access to the capital. Hey,
I
we'll talk again next Thursday. All right, buddy?
look forward to it.
All right. He's Eric Garfield from Florida Prospects Report. We'll give out your Twitter handle.
It is Eric Birdland.
So it's at Eric Birdland.
Yes, it is at Eric Birdland. You have a lot
Okay.
of prospect videos, a lot of Orioles videos and news and stuff like that.
All right. Sounds good. Eric Garfield, he's joining the team at Press Box. We'll talk Monday. I'll be on with Ross Grimsley and Luke Jackson, and Eric and I will be back next week at Eric Birdland, right?
That's me.
At
Yes, sir.
Eric Birdland. All right. That's it for tonight. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks to AJ Michaels, Superbook Sports, and the Costas Inn. See you, everybody. Bye.